I'm on the 60 freeway heading out of Los Angeles at 6 p.m. And the road is getting slow. And I hear an ice cream truck? That was weird. Yeah, I'm just randomly going live on my commute. Don't normally go live on this channel. Haven't posted anything on here in months. I just wanted to see what this was like. I mean, look, I could I could do stuff with this commute. It's a long, annoying commute. I could do things. Why I'd necessarily want to, I don't know, but I could, is the point. I can't, for example, listen to the radio because that's copyrighted material. But, like I can't respond to chats, but this channel's never live, so there's no reason for me to. This is just like an experiment. I mean, I could maybe get an MP3 player or maybe an old cell phone and play music or play open source stuff and listen to it, things like that. Of course, then, it's one of those things that I do at a certain point, I do need to, like, turn this off. I mean, I'm distracted by the road, and my focus needs to be on the road. There are cars in front of me. This is slow moving. So what do you do about that? I mean, it's like if I had news to talk about, it's like Greta Thunberg. You guys heard about the fact that she was in that flotilla to go bother Israel, and they kicked her out of the lead boat because they wanted to exclude LGBTQ plus people. That's one of those things that a lot of people don't understand about the whole Gaza Strip thing is that, the Palestinian people, well, they're very traditional. They're Sharia law followers, so they believe, if your daughter is sexually assaulted, it's her fault. And that it's perfectly acceptable for her brother to kill her because she's useless to the family now. And, these things are terrible. And yet the liberal side of America support Palestine and Gaza. And it's like, I understand that people should be free, but also understand that no state should force their religion on anyone. And I really don't think we should recognize any government with a state religion. Israel, by the way, if you don't know, does not have a state religion. Like, yes, they are considered the Jewish state, but there's no, like, you have to be Jewish to be an Israeli. That's not how it works. You can be anything to be an Israeli, but I mean, that's just part of the thing. But here's the thing about politics: the left wing, the right wing, they're both wings of the same bird, and that bird happens to be a mentally ill dodo with Tourette's. So I mean, today I met an old man. He was walking his dog. Well, no, didn't meet him today. I knew him. I'd spoken to him before. He walks by the building where I work, and he's got this charming elderly dog, and um, he said something about Trump. He said something like, Trump took all the money that we were using to take care of the homeless. And I think there is some truth to that. I'm not dead sure. But, I mean, not all the money. But let's be clear on the subject. This is California, and we need to worry about our homeless. We can't rely on the federal government because the federal government don't care. It's one of those things that we all need to realize as Californians, as people, is that, this is not a problem that is going to go away. You can't wait for someone to come and save you. You have to resolve this problem in and of yourself. The other day I ran into some troll. He's a bigger YouTuber than me, and he was playing a video from one of my channels, which is illegal. And he comes out there and he criticizes me for writing my representation, for writing my congressman. It's like, no, every American should make their voice heard. If I'm going to vote for this guy or girl, I think it's girl, I don't remember my current congressperson, but, if I'm going to vote for my representation, I should make my voice heard. And yeah, I write Governor Newsom. I wrote President Biden. I have never written President Trump. I will grant you that. Maybe I should. He's the president. Let's be clear on that. I mean, I didn't vote for the man. And I was making conversation with a Trump hater, so I got to make some jokes. Ooh, there's a white crane, the bird, sitting in the grass. Oh, that's so beautiful. Anyway, so yeah, I was talking to someone who was clearly very anti-Trump. And I mean, I've toned down my political rhetoric. I made fun of Biden. I made fun of Trump. I did that. Although Biden doesn't give me as much material. But, it's like the guy said, Trump's a pile of crap. And I was like, I think crap is offended. And he just laughs. It's like, yeah. I think we should be able to laugh at our politicians. But I mean, I'm very sure that if somebody hated Biden and he said Biden's a pile of crap, and I said, yeah, I think crap is offended, I think he'd still laugh. So let's just say that joke is pretty universal when it comes to politicians. I mean, yeah. Look, I tell you, when you're on the road like this, and I honestly don't know if anybody's listening or anybody's what, it doesn't show me. I don't know if that is because I'm on the road, because that's the settings that are here. I won't know until I get home whether anybody watched this, and it's good. It's good that way because I'm not paying attention to what you guys who might be watching. I am paying attention to the road. That's the important thing. Um, but on the one hand, talking to an imaginary audience, or possibly even a real audience, there are advantages. For one thing, I'm less tempted to stop and get fast food, and believe me, I've had enough of that. If I stopped eating fast food now and never ate fast food again for the rest of my life, I'd probably be a better man for it. I couldn't tell you how much junk there is in my car, but that's kind of beside the point. Another thing that really has been on my radar for a bit, something I kind of wanted to talk about, was Jimmy Kimmel. It's like there was a Charlie Kirk assassination, and Jimmy Kimmel went on his show and he said, that the left, or the right wing people were doing everything they could to distance themselves from the assassin. Not knowing whether this man was, where this person was on the political spectrum. And it turns out this guy's family was likely supportive of Trump, so they were right wingers. But he doesn't look to have been. But let's be clear: when you get to the point where you're going to go kill somebody, should your political party really matter? I mean, you're a lunatic at that point. And I mean, it's like, look, this is a tragedy. Charlie Kirk was a young man. He left behind a family. This is a tragedy, okay. But Kimmel didn't say anything bad about Kirk. He said something bad about politicians who are trying to spin this into political points. And it's like, yeah, like, you got a point there. Like, we should all just agree this is a tragedy and try to, like, maybe we should look at security or possibilities, or, maybe stricter gun laws. I don't know. I'm not following the case well. But we shouldn't be trying to spin this for political points. Okay, and then he made a comment that Trump, who at least knew Kirk, don't know if he would consider him a friend or not, but at least knew Kirk, didn't seem all that grief-stricken. It's like a friend of his died, and, in a very violent way. And it's like Trump seems to be just, it happened. Which, that's kind of on brand for Trump. And I mean, whether that's a good thing or a bad thing is something that you can only ask yourself. Let's be clear on this fact that this guy, he's a businessman, he's a politician, and look, bad things happen to me. And I then have to ask myself, like, how much should I let this impact my ability to do things like, say, my job, Like, I got to go to work. I went to work, and, I was working at a place once where I had just been there working a week, and I show up there, and nobody says anything to me. I'm going to the break room to make my coffee, because I make my coffee at the start of every shift, and, like, there's this chick in the lobby. Apparently, she's been harming herself. Nobody says a damn thing to me. I see her, I don't think much of her, I mean, nobody says anything. Nobody communicates with me that this is a crisis and that I should be, actively participating in protecting this person who is harming themselves. Okay? So, like, I come back, I've got my coffee cup, and, like, I'm just there, and, like, she's gone. There are a bunch of cops, like, bunch of cops just sitting there. I forget if it was 4 or 6. I remember there being at least 4 cops, but at some point 2 cops left the building, so it might have been there were 4 and it got down to 2, or it was 6 and it got down to 4. I don't remember, but it's like, so I'm there, and finally somebody lets me know what's going on, and it's like the place had a landline, and on the landline it actually would say like information from the caller, like a cell phone. And like, wonder who that's honking at. It's a truck behind me. But anyway, so like, you know, like she calls and she's talking to me, and I'm, telling the police, it's her, like, and they're all listening to me, and like, there's this one cop keeps trying to coach me, and like, I try to hand it off to him because I just started working there. I try to hand it off to a more experienced employee, and there was a more experienced employee who was right there, and I was like, hey, do you want to talk to this guy? And she definitely knew him. She probably met him when she was brought into the facility. It was a homeless shelter, and she just won't stop talking to me. So I don't want to break the continuity there. And like, this was a very upsetting situation for me because apparently she, like, she's a prostitute, and that's her thing, she's a prostitute. And she talked about how she was a prostitute in her life and being in a mental institution, and talked about how her mother was a better person than her in her opinion, and how her mother had never been a prostitute, and all kinds of stuff like that, very graphic things. And the whole time I'm asking this chick questions about her surroundings, like, hey, are you safe? Can you see cars? Is there light? And I'm repeating everything she says back to me so the cops can hear me. And then suddenly, the cops leave, or two cops leave, as I said. And a few minutes later, she says the cops are here, and the phone goes dead. So it's like, yeah, that was a really rough situation. And I mean, I remember that was over, and I just wanted to scream. I wanted to scream. I had been on the phone for an hour and 50 minutes, and I wanted to scream. But, I mean, I'm sitting there with the cops looking at me. If I screamed, I would have looked like a real sissy. Would not have been a very, very good look for me, if you know what I mean. But, so yeah. Wondering what my screen is doing. I'm not seeing any activity. No one's probably watching this. That's one of those things about YouTube. But anyway, so it's like I say, I would have been a real sissy. And I got up on these wobbly legs of mine, and, because I freaked out a little bit, I just talked somebody down from suicide. And, went on patrol, because I'm a security officer, it's what I do. And I was just like, oh God, but like, what do? You've got to just keep working. And it's like I say, like, something really grisly happened at my house the other day. One of my cats had a litter of kittens. I'm not sure which one. And apparently a coyote or a dog or something got into them and killed them all. They were maybe 2-3 days old, not even eyes open yet. But, I came out, and there they were, all on my porch, dead. Blood everywhere, and it's, didn't even know they were there. And it's like, okay, I can't leave these here. Gotta go to work. What do? Clean it up. And then I can't go to work, like, being, oh my God, I saw a bunch of dead kittens. Like, seriously. I mean, nothing really affects me anymore. I'm so hardened. I mean, I remember there was one time I was at work, and there was a guy running around, like, having diarrhea, screaming he was going to kill himself. And, like, one of the other employees just, gets in my face and screams, "How are you so calm?" And I was like, exactly what do you expect me to be? What emotions should I be expressing right now? I'm doing my job. I'm focused on trying to save this man's life. Freaking out isn't going to help. So I'm a very hardened person. I've seen a lot of anguish in my life, you know, and I'm just I'm just hard boiled at this point, you know. I'm one of those people that you're not gonna freak me out too easily, and I don't know if that's a good thing. You know, I don't know if that's a good thing or not, but it's getting cold in here. Turn down the AC. But it's how life is. So then you look at Donald Trump. I mean, he's a dude running a country. So, maybe he needs to be the kind of guy that can shrug off death, because as a person who's running a country, you have to understand he's going to make decisions that take lives, okay? You know, he's going to make decisions that get people killed. He's going to make decisions to, like, bomb. Like, he's made decisions to bomb things. And it's like, yeah, like, you can't sit there and freak out, oh my God, I got somebody killed. You're the president of the United States. So, whether or not his coldness toward Charlie Kirk in the public eye is a good thing or a bad thing is something you have to ask yourself. Maybe he should show more sympathy, or maybe, him moving on to the next topic is a good thing. Okay, I mean, that is Donald Trump. It's like, he said that his response to 9/11, the fall of the towers, was for him to turn around and say, like, now my building is the biggest. Or my building is the tallest in New York, or something like that. So, tragedy doesn't impact him the same way it impacts the rest of us. But once again, it's just a fact. It's not something that I can really say, well, I mean, is it a good or a bad thing? I know that being overreactive to tragedy certainly wouldn't be a good thing in his position. But, I'm pretty sure Charlie Kirk's family would have appreciated a little more of the sentiment. But then, what do I know? That's kind of life. It's like, as I say, they pulled Kimmel from the air because he said, basically two things. One, that Donald Trump was not very concerned about Kirk, and two, that, right-wingers were distancing themselves from the killer, okay, which, I don't know if they were actually doing that. But then everybody got together, left and right, and said, Kimmel is just exercising his right to free speech. And we as a society cannot be the kind of society that shuts people down like that. We just can't. Okay, and look, I think they said it was Bill Maher who said it was something like 26 years or 24 years to the day that he was canceled because Jimmy Kimmel actually took the time spot on the same network that used to be Bill Maher's Politically Incorrect. And Bill Maher said something that was politically incorrect on his channel or on his program, and he got canceled for it. And then he went out there and he started doing real time with Bill Maher. And what he said was that, calling the people that carried out the 9/11 attack cowards was not correct because, they gave their life for what they believed in. So his opinion on the subject is that's not cowardly. I don't know what it is, but it's not cowardly. Although you do have to point out here that these people were part of a religion who believed that they would be rewarded for this attack. All right? So, you know, whether it's cowardly or not, I honestly, I mean, I have to be kind of on Mars' side. I really couldn't tell you. I mean, the coward would be whoever orchestrated the attack. They didn't jump on the front line and say, I'm going to die for this. They recruited somebody and had them die for it. I mean, bin Laden, he was a coward. You know, elderly man on dialysis though he was, you know, he didn't go out there and say, hey, I'm right here, America, come F and get me. He sat there and he hid and he cried like a child and it's like people were saying, hey man, you got 72 virgins coming your way. If you honestly believe that, why don't you crawl out of your hole and let us pop you? So that's one of those things. It's much like the same people that are pulling the strings for Hamas, the same people in Gaza. They're billionaires. They're living at these, swanky hotels. They're not starving. They're not suffering because of this war. They're sitting back there popping themselves a champagne bottle and laughing about how people are dying, and they're blaming Jews for it. That's one of those things that we as a people, we need to be more educated, because being more educated is going to get us to be able to stand against lies. And I mean, you always have to look a little deeper. It's one of those things I've learned in life. I mean, it's like, I remember, on the assault on the Capitol there, when like people were saying, hang Mike Pence. And initially I thought that had to be a left-wing phrase. I thought, why are we hanging Mike Pence? What did he do? What happened? And it was like, no, it wasn't. It wasn't the Democrats who wanted to hang Mike Pence. It was the Republicans who wanted to hang Mike Pence. And I go, huh? What? Why? He's a Republican. Why would I mean, he's a staunch Republican. It's one of those things you say, like, why would you want Mike Pence in the presidency at all? Well, I mean, why would you want to kill him either, And now, Mike Pence, you have to admit he is a brave man, okay? Not saying he's a smart man. I don't know him at all. Never followed him as a politician. I'm not saying he has any good ideas, but brave, certainly how I would define him, because, they were coming for his life, and he did not bow down. He stood by his principles, which is admirable. I mean, just understand something about all of us, we as human beings. Okay? It's like, I am of Hebrew descent. I was raised for at least 10 years of my life as a Jew, and, that's who I've always been. I have to admit, despite the fact that my mother's family was very Jewish, not all of her siblings' kids are Jewish. It's like, my cousin Lori is a Christian. And I'm like, what? She's also a Trump supporter. So my mother, she didn't really bestow a lot of Jewishness on me. That's just not who she was. I mean, she didn't go to synagogue very often. I remember we did go. But like I never learned Hebrew, which I personally, I think it makes me less of a person for it. But I'm a little old to be learning any language at this point. Although if you're determined enough, but it's like my mother was not very Jewish, but I was raised as a Jew. But it's like if I were raised as a Christian, I would probably be a Christian. I don't would probably not be Jewish, and I would probably feel like Christians do. Now my father, he was a Christian, and they're both dead. But my father, like, he hated the fact that I considered myself Jewish. You know, he was a Christian, and he bounced between Catholicism and Methodism. But it's one of those things about the old man is that he was just a weirdo. He had the religion of the weak kind of a guy. So not really somebody that you should have put a lot of faith in having faith, And he would tell me, I believe that the Bible is inspired by God, but written by man. And I do not believe that if your right eye offends you, you should pluck it out. I believe that, it's perfectly fine if you cheat on your wife. And I remember he would tell me, he's like, son, I never cheated on your mother. Not through lack of trying, of course, but so I would have to point out that as a Christian, Jesus said that, you sinned in your heart. So the intention to do a thing is the sin. It's not, did you kill someone? It's, did you intend to? It's not, did you cheat on your wife? It's, did you intend to? I knew a guy who really wanted a threesome, and I don't know if he was married when this happened, but it's weird because I think his wife either married him before or after this happened, but he at one time said, I'm going to refuse to sleep with you until you agree to have a threesome. And then, he eventually divorced his wife, big surprise there, and said, it's like, she cheated on me. And I was like, dude, you said you were going to have a threesome with this woman, and she wasn't into it. So that was cheating, you were going to take use, and he goes, well, it never happened. So I don't care if it happened. If your wife busts in on you and there you are with the condom on, but it's still dry, and there's a chick sitting there naked, well, you didn't actually have sex. I don't think she cares if you actually had sex or not. I think it's more of a, you were going to have sex, so that's kind of the issue, It's kind of the problem with people. What are our intentions? It's just one of those things. Of course, then, another one of those things is we as human beings have this tendency to live with problems. It's something I'm not very good at, but people just live with the problems. Like me being on this road, it should take me 17 minutes to get home from my work. All right? I've been on the road for more than 40 minutes now. And we're just creeping along, It's one of those things, I sit here and I think, what's the best use of my time on a commute? And the truth about that matter is I'm not tech savvy enough to like play podcasts on my phone. Apparently, there's some place you can find Spanish lessons, maybe Hebrew lessons too. I don't know, but Spanish lessons, and you can learn Spanish on your drive home every day. And it's like, yeah, you know what? If I work 5 days a week, I have this 40-minute commute 5 days a week. If I were coming home every day and doing that, I think I'd be learning some pretty good Spanish by that point. Being, 40 minutes a day, 5 days a week learning Spanish. But then it's one thing people say is, look, maybe you shouldn't be doing anything but commuting when you're on your commute. Which, I mean, it depends on how dangerous your commute is. I mean, it's like, obviously I'm not responding to anything online, so I'm sitting here paying attention to the road. If the road demands more of my attention, like right now I saw, a car slow down in front of me. I'm going about 30 miles an hour. So it's like, yes, if the car in front of me were to stop, then I would not be distracted by the internet. Although I have to admit, I do keep glancing over at the phone, but there's nothing on the phone. But one of those things is that I definitely would not want to read comments. But there were a number of questions I had about this particular idea of live streaming on my way home from work. Okay, because here being the thing is that pretty much you get on the freeway, and once you're on the freeway, you know what's up. Like, I know how to get home from here. I could probably have Google Maps playing in the background, but that wouldn't be a good idea, because then, I'd be giving away some kind of a location of, it's like if somebody wanted to work hard enough, they could find my address. People have done that. I actually had a subscriber come out there and say, look, I work for Amazon, and I'm going to find your address, and I'm going to send you some things. And he did. So he found my address. And I need to upgrade my security system for that reason. But anyway, it's just one of those factoids. So as I was saying, it's like, I really shouldn't have, maybe I could have like a earpiece or something, but I really shouldn't have like it saying the directions of where I am. Because, like, somebody could find out what kind of car I drive. I've never been shy about what kind of car I drive. And if they wanted to find out bad enough, they could be trolling this road. I should turn my lights on. It's getting dark. But they could be following this road, being like, hey, let me find this guy. Let me confront him. Because, like, I know people online have pissed me off bad enough that I'd like to confront them. It's just one of those things. All you know is all you know. Married. Yeah, 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 yeah. Part of the problem of this, though, I will grant, as I am burping, which is probably pretty disgusting for you guys, having something to say for, 40 minutes on my commute home. I don't know if I could do that. I mean, one of the things I thought I should probably do for this particular channel is, what is it? Is I should get a subscription to Ground News. And with a subscription to Ground News, I could have a more rounded understanding of the world today. Which is something that I'm having that understanding. I mean, look, do understand something, okay? I used to be very staunchly Democrat. And then I found out that Democrats were anti-Israel, which is, it had never come up. It had been something that I had kind of heard about, but I'd always thought that the Republicans were the anti-Israel ones. Because, I mean, Nazis tend to be right-wing, right? But no. Okay, I'm getting off the freeway now. "76 trombones hit the counterpoint, 110 cornets played the air. Then I modestly took my place as the lonely bass as I pop and down the square. Consider yourself at home, consider yourself one of the family. We've taken to you so strong, it's clear we're going to get along." All right, ladies and gentlemen, so I am approaching roads where I will be more focused, so I am going to be letting you go as soon as I hit the corner. Well, if I stop at a stoplight anyway. There's a stoplight. Starts with an earthquake. Alright, here we go. We're done. Talk to y'all later.